I hope you're doing well today. Thank you very much for joining me. We're going to be looking at the account of Jesus healing a leper today. Our hymn is the hymn Jesus is Tenderly Calling.
Jesus is tenderly calling thee home, calling today, calling today. Why from the sunshine of love wilt thou roam, farther and farther away? Calling today, today, calling today, today. Jesus is tenderly calling today, is tenderly calling today.
Appreciate it, Lee. We are looking in Luke chapter 5 today. Verse 12. And it happened when he was in a certain city that behold, a man who was full of leprosy saw Jesus, and he fell on his face and implored him, saying, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Then he put out his hand and touched him, saying, I am willing, be cleansed. Immediately the leprosy left him. And he charged him to tell no one, but go and show yourself to the priest and make an offering for your cleansing, as a testimony to them, just as Moses commanded. However, the report went around concerning him all the more, and great multitudes came together to hear and be healed, and to be healed by him of their infirmities. So he himself often withdrew into the wilderness and prayed. Okay. What points might we make about the account? One is, I want you to see when this is. To look back in the passage, let me back it up a little bit, because when this is right after the account of the fishermen. Excuse me. As the Lord has told them, do not be afraid, from now on you will catch men. And so they brought their boats to land, they forsook all and followed him. And the point I wanted to make about that is, hey, from now on you will catch men. Well, what kind of men? These kind of men. You know, it would be, for example, if right after the account of the fishermen, you have the account of the rich young ruler. And here's someone who's kept the law since his youth. Here's someone who's obviously blessed by God. Here's someone who, do you remember when he goes away sorrowful, for he had great possessions, and the Lord talks about how hard it was for those who are rich to enter the kingdom. And I believe it's Peter who says, who then can be something along the lines of, I can't remember exactly how I phrase it, who then can be saved, or something along those lines. But as we think about the account, you know, if it was the rich young ruler right after the fisherman, well, they would have, we came for these sort of men. You know, if it was Nicodemus, we came for this sort of man. If it was someone else who was respected, if it was someone else who was already, I mean, they're God-fearing people. But to begin with a leper, what kind of man is this? And look in the account, this isn't just a leper, this is someone, he was a man who was full of leprosy. Leprosy, and not to get too much into it, but as it was a debilitating disease, and there would have been stages of it. So, for example, Naaman in the Old Testament was a leper. I don't know how full of leprosy he was. He was still doing his job. He was the commander of the army. And so I would suggest perhaps, not saying it was good, he had leprosy. It was still, in all likelihood, a death sentence. And so not trying to in any way cheapen that miracle in the Old Testament. But this man is full of leprosy. From now on you will catch men. What kind of men? Men who are fully unclean. Fully unclean. Back to our passage. What does Jesus do? He put out his hand and touched him. May I ask a question? Did Jesus have to touch him in order to heal him? The answer is no. So it makes one ask the question, why did Jesus touch him then? May have been the first person who had touched this man in a long time. So you might think about the compassion of Jesus touching him. You might also think about it being a lesson for others. Jesus touched him. The Lord tells him, go and show yourself to the priest and make an offering for your cleansing as a testimony. He says he charged him to tell no one. But regardless, the report went around concerning him all the more. The reason the report went around concerning him all the more is, you might think about it, it would be easy just looking at this account to think, oh, well, obviously, here's someone who's full of leprosy, and when people see that he's not full of leprosy, that the report circulated. But when you actually, not there, when you come over to Mark, and in Mark's account, you have this. In Mark chapter 1, Jesus strictly warned him and sent him away at once and said, see that you say nothing to anyone. Verse 45, however, he went out and began to proclaim it freely and to spread the matter, so Jesus could no longer enter the city, but was outside in the deserted places, and they came to him from every direction. Jesus could no longer, as it says, openly enter the city. He had to stay outside of the city. You might think about that, where the lepers were. But we'll simply say this. Jesus had told the man, don't tell anyone. Go show yourself to the priest. Don't tell anyone. And the man told everyone. And it would have been hard not to tell everyone. And probably people did see him and had questions. But this man was not being discreet. And so it is hard, it's hard to blame him. But at the same time, the Lord told him, don't tell anybody. And so we need to be very careful to obey what the Lord tells us to do. Because sometimes, even when we may have good intentions, we may be doing something that the Lord doesn't want us to do. And we may just be, we don't realize that we may be actually harming the Lord's efforts. And maybe in our own naivete, the Lord doesn't want us to be naive, for one thing. Lord doesn't want us to be gullible. The Lord wants us to be wise. And ultimately, the Lord wants us to obey. And so we need to be careful. The man, like I said, it's hard to blame him. But we need to recognize, because of what he did, the Lord's purpose was being impeded. And now, rather than Jesus coming to the people in the city, the people are having to come to Jesus out in the wilderness. You might think about it. Just do what the Lord tells you to do. I understand, with this man, understand he's happy, he's rejoicing, obviously. Wonderful miracle had happened. But do what the Lord tells you to do. You might remember the lame man who's healed at the pool of Bethesda. Remember what Jesus tells him? Like he tells a lot of people, sin no more, lest a worse thing come upon you. There are worse things than leprosy. So be careful to obey the Lord. Appreciate you. I hope you have a good day. Join us tomorrow for another portion of our daily praise.